Thank you. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome. We are going to go ahead and call this year's annual meeting of First Universalist Church of Minneapolis to order. My name is Mark Gorlick. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the pleasure of serving as president of the church this year. Thank you. We've ascertained that we have about 72 members here present in person and 33 online, which gives us a quorum for the meeting. So that was the first hurdle, so yay for us. I'm going to invite Reverend Jen to share some opening words and lead us in a chalice lighting.
As we prepare to begin the meeting, I just want to take a moment to invite you to call into the space in your own heart and mind and in our collective spirit all those who have been a part of this church or been impacted by this church over the last 167 years of its existence. So let's bring the ancestors into the space with us. Maybe these are folks that you can name in your own mind and heart. Maybe these are folks you never knew, but who have laid the groundwork for the possibility of this community to exist for us today. From this place, we remember too that there is a future, some of which we will be a part of in our physical body, and some of which will be beyond us in our lifetimes. May the work we do, may the ways we sustain this church, our faith, may the ways we transform ourselves individually and collectively be for the good, for the generations to come. With this, I invite us to light our chalice, because this is spiritual work that we do, intending to the life of the congregation. So let's share together, if you'd like, those words that bind us together in community. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thank you, Jen. I'm grateful that once again, for the nth year in a row, where N is getting to be a large number, Eric Cooperstein has agreed to be our parliamentarian. So per our bylaws, I would like to appoint Eric Cooperstein as the parliamentarian for the meeting. We don't need a motion for that. Thank you. But we will for the next one. Traditionally, we have allowed the Board of Trustees to approve the minutes of this meeting at its next meeting, so that we don't have to call another church meeting to approve the minutes. So I would welcome a motion to authorize the Board of Trustees to approve the meeting minutes at its next meeting. There's moved. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? If not, please indicate your approval by raising your card if you're in the sanctuary, and to indicate on the poll online. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. I'd like to invite Reverend Jen to come up and share her minister's report for the year.
All right. I've promised myself a challenge I once gave myself for a sermon, which was 5 minutes. I don't know, we'll see. But I will, in fact, set a timer, partly because so much of what has happened this year, you have all been a part of. You have been here, while we each have different perspectives on it, and different views in. This is a congregation that is created together, and you all are as much or more a part of it than any one of the staff. Hearing some ringing, which I'm guessing you are too, Olu. Thanks. Also, you can find my senior minister's report in the annual report, which is available online, and you can get all the details there, and I'm so happy to talk with you about it if you want to dig in with me. So this morning I'm just going to do a broad arc. And I want to ground us, all right, start. I want to ground us in, for me, what's been central principles this year and really always, which are the principles and the guidance from Martin Luther King Jr. In his final book called Chaos or Community, he offers us a question and a way pointing in the future. We can either, as a country, devolve into chaos, or we can lean into beloved community. These are the paths that are available for us. And King, in all of his work around nonviolence, there was a card he would hand out to folks who came to be a part of protests and the movement. And on that card were the 10 commandments of being a part of the movement for civil rights. And if you look through those 10 commandments, I think it's at least 8, maybe 9, are about spiritual preparation. They're about how is our heart going to be grounded? How are we going to be tied together in community, both to meet the moment of caring for each other, but also of caring for the larger world and community and our country. So I bring this up because this is what we need right now. The role of the church is very clear in this moment in our country's life, to me. We are needing more than ever to lean into community rather than chaos. And that means our hearts need to be prepared. Our spirits need to be prepared. And as many of the movement organizers I've been working with say, we need to be in formation with each other. So that means that we need to know one another. We need to be in relationship. We need to be ready to show up for ourselves, for each other here outside the walls of the church and also in the larger moment that is this country. This is a moral moment. It has been all year. It has been for many years. When I say it's a moral moment, I'm not saying that it's about left or right. I'm talking about right and wrong, and about us being grounded in our values, our Unitarian Universalist values, and being able to live from those as individuals and also as a collective. So I really want to emphasize those pieces as we go. This year we've focused on 3 major themes in addition to our achievement of our visionary goals. But those 3 themes are spiritual resilience for the long haul, fostering experiences of beloved community, and humility. Humility I like to name in a couple of ways. Other people know things. That's pretty important. Also, having an accurate sense of who we are and where we are in this moment, and being flexible enough to move and change with what's happening with us. Spiritual resilience for the long haul, fostering experiences of beloved community, and humility. These will be themes that we carry forward in the next year as well. We're going to stay grounded in that. As I look and see that I'm already at 3 minutes in my proposed 5 minutes, I want to name one thing that will soon be revealed more fully, which is that the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association has decided to give this year's Volunteer Service Award to the Unitarian Universalists of Minnesota. This is a big honor. This is a big honor. It's going to be given at General Assembly in just a few days, recognizing the work and the ministry seen and unseen, intentionally visible and intentionally invisible, that we have all been a part of in one way or another in caring for our neighbors and ourselves and each other during the largest federal occupation of a metro area ever. So I want to just lift that up, that we have been living our faith out loud in some very big and important ways, and that is being recognized as well, as it has been during the process when we were supported by so many folks. So I wanted to lift that up. And I want to point to the future, even more than looking to the past. So as I said, we're going to continue this focus on spiritual resilience for the long haul, on experiencing beloved community. That means experiencing love between and among and outside the walls of this congregation, and also growing in humility, accurate sense of who we are, of what the moment is, and how to move in it in the ways that are best suited to who we are individually and collectively. As we move forward, we're going to continue our focus on shared ministry, on shared leadership, on shared responsibility, on living out our faith out loud. We're also looking ahead to meeting the moment that we're in right now and kind of taking stock of where we are. You've probably already seen through looking at the newsletter that we are proposing, actually we're going to go forward with, it's past proposal, we're going to go forward with some changes in our religious education programming schedule for next year. We continue to be one of the largest programs in the country of children and youth and family ministries. There's only one other congregation that has over 300 folks, kids and youth enrolled in religious education. There are only 2 others that have more than 200 kids enrolled. We have about 335-ish, around there. How we've been successful is by meeting the moment, not staying stuck in old ways of doing things. So what that means is we've been very successful with piloting a Wednesday night, Our Whole Lives curriculum for 9th graders. 8th graders? 9th graders? 8th graders, thank you. That's not only kids and families from within our congregation, but interfaith. So this is kids and families from other congregations and other religious affiliations as well. That's been very successful. We've also added Wednesday night youth group programming and Saturday morning young family programming. So while our anchor is Sunday morning religious education classes and experiences for children and youth, we've added on some other opportunities as well. Some of what we've seen in religious education parallels what we've seen in worship, which is that post-pandemic, or I don't know that we're ever post, but in this place where we are, folks are still maintaining a strong affiliation with religious organizations, but their attendance is more sporadic than it was before. So folks that maybe would come to worship on Sunday morning or religious education every single week now come twice a month in person. That's one of the new rhythms that's come about. So what will be happening going forward with religious education is we'll continue to focus on Wednesday evening programming, Saturday programming, Sunday programming, but we'll have one cohort of children and youth kind of time slot on Sunday mornings. This will have the kids have a more full experience instead of being broken up into a very small group and a bigger group, but be all together. We've had a lot of input and opportunities. So the Children, Youth, and Families Advisory Team did extensive research looking at the data about who's attending, who's enrolled, what the connection points are, and made proposals together about how to proceed in a way that would be best supportive of our children, youth, and families. So that work has been done. Thank you. That was the work and labor of shared ministry of so many lay leaders involved in that. So thank you for doing that work. And I want to flag for going forward that, of course, religious education on Sunday morning and worship times are interlocked with one another. For folks who have been a part of the congregation for a long time, you know that the number of services on Sunday mornings has been pretty much tied to the number of sections of religious education that we have needed. So when we have had periods where there were 3 services, it was largely driven by the need for that many spaces within religious education attendance on Sunday mornings. Now that we know that we have the space really that we need within one section of religious education on Sunday mornings, we're looking ahead to the possibility of one worship service on Sunday mornings. So we've done the work to get the input and have shared ministry involved in making the decision around religious education on Sundays. We still have that to do around Sunday morning worship. So I want you to know that you're going to hear more about this in the newsletter coming out this week, but I want to hear from you about what would work best and what your thoughts are, your input for Sunday morning worship times. My sense is that it would be wonderful to be able to worship together as one community, to be here all together and to feel that power and strength. Also, that would give us the possibility of programming time after the service. So I will put a plug in that says I would really love some folks who want to be part of a food hospitality team on Sunday mornings to help provide some snacks and food after the service, and then for us to be able to move into small group opportunities or learning or trainings or things like that on Sundays after the service. So that's the direction we're heading. There'll be a listening session. I'm so over time, dear Lord. Okay, we have it. Thank you, Mark. So I'll hold a listening session after church on the 28th, 2 Sundays from now, because next week church is at the Riverview. Just to say that again, next Sunday church is at the Riverview at 10. We're going to be watching the General Assembly service with other congregations from the Twin Cities Metro. So in-person listening session after the service on the 28th. There'll also be a Zoom option at some point soon, and I'll be sending out a survey as well, just to get some feedback, both on worship time possibilities, but then also worship themes for next year are going to be grounded in these 3 phrases, which may be familiar to you. This is who we are, this is what we do, this is the work of the church. Building our identity and the actions that flow out of that, and what is the role of the church in this moment. So that is my summary for now.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks to all the folks who participated in the thinking and planning around religious education. I know there was a ton of work, there were a ton of people involved. And then this next step about thinking about whether we also want to make any changes in the Sunday morning worship schedule. As heard, we'll have opportunities for feedback there so we can incorporate all that in. But thanks to everybody who has participated, and thanks in advance for sharing your opinions going forward. As Jen pointed out, there's a lot more in the written report, which you can get online, but I'll go ahead and give my report now. So if I could have my slides up, Olu. I'm going to really concentrate on talking about what the board has been up to this past year and how we're looking ahead to next year as a board. And to do that, I thought maybe I'd give some context around what the board's job is, so that so you know why we're doing what we're doing. So you can get to the next slide, Olu. The board's responsibilities really fall into 2 large categories. The first is our fiduciary responsibility. And I don't know about any of you, but for many, many years, I misinterpreted the word fiduciary to mean financial, and that is not actually what it means. It comes from the Latin word trust, like fidelity. And as trustees of the church, we have the responsibility to, first of all, act in the best interests of the church. So not in our own individual best interests, not in the best interests of any subsection of the church, but of the church as a whole, and to act to ensure the well-being of the church. Now, there's a financial component to that, so that is part of a fiduciary responsibility, but it's the overall well-being of the church, not just its finances, that we are ultimately entrusted with the responsibility for overseeing. And then the second category of things is our role in shaping the strategy of the church. And it's another word that can get a little wonky. The church is here for a purpose, right? We have a mission. Our mission statement is that in the Universalist spirit of love and hope, we give, receive, and grow. And as an organization that's been around for 166 years, that can mean different things over time, depending on what's happening within the church, what's happening within the larger community. So we have a role as a board is to periodically look at that mission and define the work that we need to do as a congregation at this moment in time to advance that mission of growing, receiving, or giving, receiving, and growing in that universalist spirit of love. The way we do that here is every 5 years, the board leads a process with the congregation to define our visionary goals. That's the chunk of work that we're committed to as an organization for that 5-year period to advance that mission. We completed that a couple of years ago, so we're now in the 2nd year of that. And so each year then we work collaboratively with the senior minister and lay leaders to then define the specifics of the work that we're going to do around our visionary goals. If you go to Jen's report, as Jen, as the delegated leader for programs and operations, talks about the work that we've done this past year in advancing our visionary goals, so I won't repeat that. It's in her report. On the financial side of things, our finance committee and treasurer have a lead role in our oversight of the financial well-being of the church, and you'll hear about that more in a couple of minutes from Cameron. I want to focus on the work that we've done as a board to focus on this other component of well-being. What I listed here is cultural well-being or congregational health. So Olu, if you can go to the next slide. Year before this past one, as a board, we worked with our UUA consultant, or Mid-America Region consultant, Reverend David Piles, and using an instrument that the UUA has to look at congregational health, we recognize that, coming out of the pandemic and all the other things that have been changing in the last, few years, there were elements of congregational health that we felt we needed to pay attention to. And so coming into this current church year that we're ending, we wanted to get some further input on that. So the board used this survey from the UUA, the staff did it, and we sent it out to the congregation, and about 90 or so of you responded to that. And last summer, we met in retreat as a board to plan our goals for the year, and we sent that survey out specifically to help us prioritize what should we be focused on with regard to congregational well-being. And we landed on two themes that arose from that work: trust and belonging. So the first set of goals was around enhancing our board governance practices to enhance trust. Trust, broadly speaking, within and between board, staff, congregation as a whole. And so you can see here the things that we set out to do this year. The board used to have a covenant that just defined for us, that we created, that we defined how we would be together as a board, how we would be together to serve the work of the church. We've also in the past had a congregational covenant. Right now we don't have either of those active. And so we decided we would start with ourselves as a board to not only create a covenant, but actually hold ourselves to actually living that covenant. So that we've done that work this year, and it has felt really great. And we wrote a column. There was a column about this in the Liberal if you want to hear more about it. I'm also happy to talk to anybody about it. We also, as a board, one of our roles is to define how authority is delegated and how oversight works in the church. So we have a set of policies around what we do as a board, around what authority is delegated to the senior minister, to various committees, how we work collaboratively to carry that work out, how we oversee and monitor progress that's being made. Collectively, this constitutes what we call our governing policy handbook. And this was created about 15 years ago when we first moved to this sort of mode of governance. And we have made some modest changes to it over that period of time, but we haven't done a comprehensive review and update of that in 15 years. A lot of things are different now. There are things about the congregation that are different. There are things that we have learned over that time about what works, what doesn't work. So we really thought it was time to really dive into that and make sure that it reflects our current realities. It reflects what we have learned over the last 10 plus years. And so our governance committee, which includes two of our board members, Luke Wast, who chaired the committee, and Jean Guillen, as well as Eric Cooperstein, Karen Willey, and Andy Pugh, worked really diligently over this year to do a top-to-bottom review and recommended edits to that set of governing policies. We are in the process of finalizing that, so the board will review the next draft of that at our next meeting, and we're on track to get that probably finalized by the beginning of the church year, probably early in the fall. Thank you to those people, because this is, I think it's probably fun for some people, but it can also be really tedious. But you get a bunch of lawyers in a room, and it's great. So. But I really appreciate it. I mean, what we're seeing so far is just much more in harmony with the way we are conducting the governance of the church now. So we'll finalize that. We've been trying to, communication is really important. So one of the things that we decided to do this year was to add a regular column in the Liberal from the board about what the board is doing and how we're progressing on these goals. And so we've done that. We aim for doing that about twice a month. And then finally, we've known for a long time, one of our visionary goals is around creating greater opportunities for shared ministry, expanding that. And so we've really focused on working with the staff to create that. You heard Reverend Laura talk about it during the service. Jen talks about it in her report. We've made a lot of progress with some more fun things to do in that regard going forward. So those are the goals that we set for ourselves this year around enhancing trust. Olu, if you can go to the next slide. The other thing that bubbled up was this idea of belonging. And this was interesting because when you look at the different aspects of congregational health that we asked about in the survey, and by the way, they all rated at least pretty good, right? So there wasn't anything that was like in the basement. But belonging actually scored the highest of all of them. And it was the thing that the most people said the board should focus on. So we thought, well, that's kind of an interesting dichotomy there, right? And so we really thought, well, before we start diving in and fixing this, we need to understand this better. Why are people feeling pretty good about belonging but telling us we need to focus on it? And there were a lot of great comments in the survey, so we really dived into those and did some follow-up. And then we created some opportunities to have group conversations around that so that we can better understand, what does belonging mean to people? What does it look like? How do people feel connected to the church? What would make them feel more connected? And so this was really a year about us learning, so that next year we can start to take what we've learned and start to try to work with that. And I'll talk in a second about what we've learned, which was interesting. And again, working to develop more opportunities for shared ministry is something that we focused on this year. So looking ahead, if we can go to the last slide, when we looked at belonging and trust, frankly, one of the things that we have learned over the last couple of years, as you know, we've been working with the Intercultural Development Inventory, or IDI, which is a tool to help us understand how we, as individuals and as a collective, approach cultural difference. In some ways, we may not feel like we're very multicultural, but in many ways we are, because culture is very broad. It could include some of the things that first come to mind when we think about culture, things like race and ethnicity or language, things like gender identity and sexual orientation, but it also includes things like age and generation, income and class, where you grew up, what religious background you have, so many other things. And how we approach those differences affects that feeling of trust and that feeling of belonging. What we have learned is that although as individuals we represent a broad variety of orientations, so each of us comes at this a little bit differently, but as a collective, and this is true of the board as a group, this is true of the congregation as a group, as a collective, we tend to approach cultural difference with what's called minimization. And what that means is we tend to focus on what we have in common. So when we look at what we all bring, we tend to latch on to what we have in common. Now that is not an inherently bad thing. I would say it's an inherently good thing to find commonality. Minimization means we tend to stop there. And when we stop at what we have in common, we lose the richness of what we bring individually. So we tend to either minimize or even ignore or be blind to real differences. We tend to make assumptions about what we have in common that may or may not be true. That can lead to marginalization, that can lead to misunderstandings. And so our work is not to say we shouldn't find what we have in common, it's to say how do we move beyond minimization to not only find commonality, but also to accept and embrace differences and adapt our behaviors in ways that allow us to incorporate those differences into our collective good. So that's something that we've been learning. Now we want to think about how do we start making that happen within the board and within the congregation. A strong theme that came out of these listening sessions around belonging was that for many people, their sense of connection to the congregation as a whole is mediated through their individual connections with other people within the congregation, right? And we know that over the last few years that's been disrupted, right? When you're participating virtually in things, it's harder to make those connections. We have fewer, for a variety of reasons, fewer opportunities for small group activities. We don't have a robust means of communicating between individuals now. So those are all things that have interfered with the ability to build those personal connections that then lead to the connection with the whole. And so that was an important thing for us to learn. Now we want to think about ways that we can help to improve that. And then finally, the importance of shared ministry. For many people, that's their way of connecting, is through sharing in the work of the church. And with regard to these last two, so we're going to use this information this summer when we come together as a board for our retreat to plan next year's goals. What are some of the things we can do about this? And one of the things I'm very excited about is in next year's budget, as you'll see, we have budget for, and we're getting ready to start the process of recruiting for, a full-time staff position related to membership and programming that will really help facilitate a lot of these things that I think will help us to build better connections with each other and with the congregation as a whole. So that's very exciting, and then we'll figure out what else we want to work on as a board. So that's what we're thinking about moving forward. And that's the end of my report. I just want to end with a word of gratitude for being allowed to do this. Being allowed to be on the board, being allowed to serve as the president. It's a great honor. It's a responsibility that I try not to take too lightly. And when Reverend Ashley asked me once about my spiritual practice, I said, Ashley, my main spiritual practice is getting shit done. So, so this fills me up as well. So I appreciate being able to do it. That concludes my report. Emily? There's 2 questions online. Go ahead. Yeah.
Will there be an opportunity for congregants to review and comment on the updated governance policy document?
So for those who didn't hear, the question was whether or not the congregation will be able to review and comment on the updated governing policy document. That is a board document, so we have gotten input from important people who are affected, so staff, from members of committees who are referenced in there. So we've had that congregational input, but the approval of that is by the board. And then second question.
It's talking about the cyber coffee hour.
Yeah.
And the status of that, and then also learn about it and about it.
Yeah, so the question was about cyber coffee hour, which was a way that we had of doing sort of communication between individuals. I would say that is something that because other things came up, this work didn't progress as much as we like to, but this is something that Ashley was working on that I think we will probably, as we look ahead to next year, try to figure out how do we recreate something that allows us to do that, a platform that allows for what Cyber Coffee Hour did, but we honestly will have to wait until we have some more staff to help us with that. So, any other questions in the room before I turn it over to Cameron? I would refer you to the columns in the Liberal that reference a lot of these things. You can go back and find them online if you're interested, if you missed them the first time around. And I'm always happy to chat about any of this stuff, so please come and find me if you're interested. With that, I would like to invite our treasurer, Cameron Smither, to come up to give our financial report and present the recommended budget for your approval.
Good afternoon. It's a serious topic, yeah. Was anyone here in the February meeting? It was a mid-year meeting. We didn't vote on anything. Oh, okay. I'm going to borrow the structure of my slides from that meeting. So it'll look familiar, but all the trivia is different. So if you click once, my agenda is to give a brief introduction, talk about the Finance Committee, our philosophies, talk about trivia, and then really focus on a refresh of our finances using year-to-date actuals for the folks out there that like that information, and then tee up a high-level view of our budget for next year. So let's click once, and we're going to start here in this first one. Yes. Okay, so our role, my role as treasurer, this is using the governing policy handbook as it exists today, so this hasn't been updated. But if you click once, some of these things will highlight. The shorthand in my mind for the role of treasurer is responsible for financial monitoring, organizes and chairs the Finance Committee, reports to the board any concerns, and reports annually to you during this meeting. So pretty straightforward. And it's pretty dry stuff. But if you go to the next slide, there's a lot of amazing congregants that help me do this job. And so this is a picture of the folks on what I consider the finest committee, the Finance Committee. Amelia, Brad, myself, Dan, Dick, Jenny, Jen, and Mark. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. These are the pictures I used during the February meeting, so you can see it's a little wintry. So, Olu, if you click once, you can make this a little more summary. Yeah, now we're getting into it. All right, let's go to the next one. If anyone hasn't read the report yet, I go into this a little bit in more depth there, but I do always like to start conversations around finances from the perspective of values and philosophy, because it's easy to jump right into the numbers, right? Think about, oh, what's the impact on the bottom line, or how much money do we have in our accounts? But really, this is spiritual work. Making financial decisions and stewarding the finances and the resources of the church is a big deal. And I like to remind myself and remind the committee and remind each of us that this is a spiritual practice. So if this is something that maybe during this discussion you feel sort of awakened to some of those spiritual practices, find me and we can talk about this. But here's how I like to approach this work. Here are the philosophies that I see in the church. And I like to ground in before I take any further steps into the numbers. So first, a reminder that financial resources are one kind of tool in our toolbox to pursue the visionary goals. A tool like time and attention, money is important, but it's not the goal. How we spend our resources is a direct reflection of our values. Life often pushes us not to talk about money openly, and so to do so, to quote Reverend Ashley, is countercultural. So the chances where we can step out of our comfort zone and maybe ask tough questions or invite tough questions, we should welcome those, knowing that contributing our resources to a cause deepens our connection to it and our sense of belonging. So I'm hopeful that not only can we shed some of the anxiety that talking about money often comes with, but we can recognize this is an important bridge between us and the church. That we can see ourselves in the work, and that by giving, we deepen that connection. Okay, with that very serious grounding in place, click one more. We could talk about, I'm going to help this stick a little bit more by using trivia questions. So get your phone out or get a pencil and paper. If you want to write on the back of your card, these will be returned. So yeah, don't do that. But the trivia questions do change every year, so you wouldn't be giving anyone any help in the future anyway. Okay, yeah, and I'll ask 6 questions throughout, so you can put, numbers 1 through 6 on there, and I'll give all the answers at the end. There's no prize, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Yeah, maybe the chocolate cake downstairs could be seen as a prize. All right, let's go ahead and move into the second portion of this, a refresh on our finances and our talk of using our finances year to date. Okay. When I think about the church's finances, I like to think of 3 main buckets. First bucket, the operating budget. So the revenues and expenses that we accumulate from operating the church throughout the year. This is what we're going to talk about at the end of this presentation, the big budget. We also have a building and capital reserve budget. Those are funds that are set aside for long-term building-related expenses. This is the longest-term planning that we do as a church, capital budgeting. And then lastly, we have a slew of funds, allocations of money designated for specific purposes, things like legacy fund, foundation, library, the history hounds. Anyone remember? Nope? Okay. Click once and we'll have our first trivia question. Of the approximately 28 funds that First Universalist holds today, the February question was how many funds are there? The answer is 28. So with that number, with 28 in mind, which 3 are the largest funds? Which 3? All right, let's move on. You'll get the answers at the end. Let's talk about the fiscal year. So this is another just important awareness piece. The church's fiscal year follows the state's fiscal calendar, July through June. There's pros and cons to that. There's also a 1-month lag in the data, so we don't know what's happening this month. We have to wait a little bit. And when we talk about the fiscal year, we often just use the year at the end. So for example, fiscal year 26, that's talking about 25 to 26. Here's a little graphic about how time stretches across those. And so if you click once more, we have question number 2. This one's a doozy. We started drafting the operating budget in January. How many months ahead is that of the date by which we know the last dollar of that fiscal year's budget was spent? If that doesn't make sense, I don't know how to make it clear. How many months ahead is that of the date by which we know how the last dollar is spent? Hint, it's in the graphic. Okay, let's move on. Next slide, yeah, okay. What is the financial story so far? So here I'm going to show some data. These depict the 9 months of the year that we have data upon, so July 1st through April 1st. I'm going to introduce the main categories and then display the difference from the budget. So this is the variance. So positive is good, negative is bad. So I don't have to say, oh, this is a surplus, oh, that's a deficit. And these numbers reflect actuals. So these are the revenues that we've actually taken in, the expenses that we've actually paid out. So it's a really up-to-date look. And if you click ahead, you'll see these are the categories. Revenues at the top include annual giving, donations, fundraising, building and capital fund, and released revenues. So all the important life-sustaining, church-sustaining funds that we receive mostly from you all in that top row. We also have some earned revenues. So renting out the space, providing certain memorial services, things like that. Not a ton of money there, but it's important in the grand scheme. And then we have a slew of expenses below that, personnel and professional being the biggest, administrative, programming, buildings and grounds, the construction loan, and other. And then all of that at the bottom, I'll spit out a net surplus or deficit. So where do we sort of shake out on all the numbers? But first, if you go to the next slide, there's a trivia question. Question 3, yeah. What share of fiscal year 26 budgeted revenues were giving or donations or fundraising? So what share of the revenues were not earned revenues? I'm looking at the church board members because they should know this one. And then if you click one more time, Olu, there's another question here. What share of the fiscal year 26 budgeted revenues were just annual pledges? Not donations or fundraising or earned revenues. How much of the church's revenue comes from you all? Comes from us all, I should say. All of us. Okay, click one more and we'll get the variance here. So let's spend a second on this and make sure we're in alignment. So the top row says annual giving, donations, etc. The variance is $100,000. That means we are ahead of our budget by $100,000. Yes, that's great. That's good. That is a positive variance. And we are ahead of where we budgeted for earned revenues as well, $7,185, putting us ahead. I keep saying ahead for a reason, but putting us ahead of our budgeted revenues by about $708,000. I say ahead because some of this is people are paying ahead of time, their pledges. So that number is going to shrink as we approach the end of the year. I hope it doesn't shrink all the way and go negative. I don't think it will, but we'll get into that in a minute. Turning to expenses now. If you click once, it'll do. There's another trivia question. What share of fiscal year 26 total annual expenses were personnel and professional? A lot. Yep. Spoiler, it's a lot. All right, if you click once more, here is the variance on our expenses. So personnel and professional, a positive variance of $8,727. Positive is good. That means we are under our budgeted expenses there. Under for administrative, under for programming, over for building and grounds. We have an old building. We love this building. It's expensive. Right where we want to be on construction loan, or right where we were planning to be on the construction loan, $39 better than we thought on other, for a total of 28-ish thousand better than we expected on expenses. We also made a little bit of money on investments, which is great. We weren't counting on anything there, bringing us to a net surplus of $142,538. That's great. That's good. That's positive. That's positive variance. Any questions about this? Excellent. Yes?
What happens to the surplus? Does it just like get recycled into where it's normally go?
Yeah, so the question was, what happens with the surplus? Good question. There's a whole policy on our website about what do we do if we have a surplus. And the short of it is, it's a question between the board and the senior minister to decide, does it best go maybe to reserve or to fill our reserves again? Is it better spent on a one-time expense in this area? So it's sort of open for the discussion between those two bodies. Yeah. Yes?
Can you tell us why for the 24,000 in positive variance on administrative?
So the question is, why are we about $24,000 positive variance on administrative expenses? I'm going to do my best to recall, and I'll look to Jen as well if you have specifics you'd like to share, Jen. Some of this, 15,000 of this, is expenses that we avoided from the Boston pilgrimage. Those are offset on revenues that we didn't take in for the Boston pilgrimage as well, so that's sort of a net zero, but it shows up as a big savings on administrative. So some of that's just not quite as concrete as some other expenses, but I also know that we saved some on software, saved some on professional development. So as we kind of looked across the year, we're always looking for ways to save money, and the administrative bucket was one of the places where we did that. So, yeah, good question. Any other burning questions on the actuals of this year? Okay. Well, I just have a little, a so what here. If you click once, I had one of these in my last one. So our annual budget was expecting, or was budgeted to come in with a $250 surplus, which is good. That's good, but that's what we voted on last year. Our current projections estimate that we're actually going to land closer to $16,000 in surplus, which is also good. Just please continue to pay your pledges. It doesn't mean that we're done for the year, but that's an important distinction from last year. If you remember where we were last year, we had rallied as a congregation. We'd come together and sort of resolve some budget issues, but in my memory, we were a little tired at that point. And so this is an important milestone, watershed moment in some ways for us, where we have stabilized. We still have questions, and we'll get into some of those questions for the next year's budget. We're not out of the woods per se, but we are in a really strong position. This is the position we want to be in as we go ahead. So I just want to thank you all for, during what could have been a really crazy, really unstable year for us internally. We know it was externally. It could have been just as unstable internally as it was. It wasn't. We were stable. I just appreciate that. Yeah. We have a question in the back. Yes. Yeah. So the question is, if we can see poking out of the bottom there, the current surplus is 142,000, and I'm saying we're projected to end with 16,000. What's going on? Where is the money going? That's a reflection of, we think, we won't know until August when the data are finally in, but we think that's a projection of people are giving ahead of schedule their pledged amount. And so if I pledged, just for simplicity, $1,000, and I gave all 1,000 of that in the first 6 months, it's going to show like we're ahead of budget, which is good. That's how we would want to be versus being behind. But over time, the expected, that $1,000 that we were expecting to get about 100 a month, that'll catch up, and we'll end closer to where we expected. So it's not a bad thing. It's sort of what we would expect to happen. This happens every year. It's one of the quirks of running a church, but we're still in good position. Okay, let's go to the final section here. Next, oh yeah, I was going to put sunglasses on myself. I forgot about that. All right, you can click us ahead. Yeah, thanks for that. All right, next year's budget. How are we preparing for 26-27? So if you click ahead, Jen did an amazing job of writing about the commitments that we make when we're budgeting, and so I just wanted to put them up again and highlight the core of, when I read this, the core of these 7 points. So one, we're presenting a balanced budget. We don't want to plan for a deficit. Number two, we're planning for inflation, so there are expenses that we know are going to be greater than last year, so we can plan for those. We're also looking to build in places in the budget where we can strengthen shared ministry. This was talked about before. I won't go too far into that. We're also listening and responding to what we heard in the pledge campaign. So we asked you all, what are your hopes? And you gave us lots of ideas. 5, 6, 7, we are increasing we're providing a cost of living increase for staff. Staff is the biggest expense of the church. So much of the work is possible just from the staff, so we want to make sure that we are living our values and how we support them. Also increasing our giving to the UUA and keeping staff benefits in alignment as well. So these are, when we talk about values and spiritual practice, this is our values in action right here. And so if you click one more, Olu, these are just notes that say, I'm going to share data about next year's budget. These are budgeted amounts. So this isn't actuals like before. This is the all-up dollars from July 1 of this year through June 30th of next year. And I'm going to use the same categories that I showed before. So if you click once, you'll see for annual giving, donations, fundraising, etc., we're planning a budget of $1.721 thousand. For earned revenue, we are expecting $113,000. That brings the total revenues of the church to $1.834 million. $1.834 million. Yes, we're a big church. It's a lot of money. And then if you click once to show the expenses in the net here, personnel and professional, $1.25 million. Administrative, $162. Programming, $106. Building and grounds, $183. The construction loan, $127. Other, $3. Can't forget the other. For a total expenses of $1.833 million and a surplus of $529. Yeah. It's a lot of work going on underneath the surface here. Question, yes? So the question was, how do we expect to go from an earned income revenue or earned revenues of $7,000 to earned revenues of $113? So this, so this, other people may have this question. So what I was showing before the 7,000 was the variance. So we were expecting something closer to 113. We were a little bit better than that in this year's dollars. So the variance was 7,000. The total amount that we're expecting next year, that's the 113. Yeah. And, yes. The impact of having only 2 ordained ministers on staff with one going on sabbatical. Yeah, the personnel and professional budget is shifting. Where those expenses go, in some part to that, I think not dramatically so. A lot of that is in the following notes and in Jen's portion of the budget, but I think that's true, right? The staff makeup is shifting. The share of staff that are ministerial staff is going to shift a little bit. Jen's being really thoughtful about how to do that. I think a lot of those are still in motion, or at least some of that is still in motion. That also started when Dr. Glenn Thomas left, and the resources around worship shifted to staff, the music director and the choir accompaniment. So that's been happening already, and a version of that will continue with the increase to Laura's hours, Reverend Laura's hours, and a new staff member specific for congregational engagement. Sure. Okay, we have a mic to run now. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah, there's two back there.
Is it fixed or is it variable? Because we're into a period of time where interest rates are going up.
Yes.
And how long is the construction loan going on?
Yep, so the question was, for the construction loan, is it a fixed rate or is it a variable rate loan? And how long, what's the term of that loan? It is a fixed rate loan, but there is a scheduled rate change in October. So it's fixed until this rate change, and then it'll change and be fixed again at a different rate. It comes due, it's a balloon payment, it comes due in 2031. Yep, so we have a few years to figure it out. The current rate is good, 2 point something something. The new rate will be less good. It's probably 6 something. And there's conversations going on about what does that mean for us right now? So good question. Yeah. Other questions about the budget? Yes?
Yeah, a bit of feedback. I would find it helpful if we could see the column that said, here's the 27 budget, and here was the 26 budget side by side.
Okay. Yeah, so the comment was it'd be nice to see the 2 years back to back so we could see where they're changing. I have some of that in the coming slides, so check back in with me after that slide and let me know if there's something that we want to connect on specifically. Okay, I have a question for you now. If you click once, Olu. The final trivia question. We make payments on our construction loan each month. How much is a single payment? Okay, you click forward. So here, channeling Ray, thanks to the inspirational and generous giving of the congregation and the careful stewardship of the staff, of our resources, the proposed operating budget includes, in my mind, 9 noteworthy changes from last year. There's more than just 9, but 9 marquee ones, and I've animated them one by one, so I'm going to do a lot of like, yeah. All right, so let's do one. Yes, so first, the Director of Worship Arts position is restructured into a half-time music director role and a part-time worship and choir accompanist role. We knew this, we've been living with this for the past 6 months, but it's formalized in the budget this year, that's different. The next one, there's plans for a new full-time program position related to membership, congregational engagement, this sort of area. That's a conversation that Jen is still having, so grab Jen if you have strong feelings about that. Number 3, Reverend Laura is increased to 30 hours a week for the majority of the year, and then to a full 40 hours a week during the 3-month sabbatical that Jen is going on. Next slide. Number 4, coverage for the senior minister sabbatical beyond Reverend Laura's increase. So that includes stuff like pastoral care increase, like I said, preaching and storytelling, music and art making events. So there's parts for the congregation as well as the staff. Yes, question? So the question was for number 2, the new full-time program position. Is that a ministerial position? No. Not planned. Yes. Another question. Mm-hmm. Number 4, the question is, when is Reverend Jen's sabbatical? And that is the spring. Jen, do you have specific dates for that?
We're waiting on our grant.
Yeah, we have oh man, you're going to steal some of the fire. Yeah. We have a grant about getting funds for that, and so we're waiting to hear back the determination of that grant before Jen decides those dates. Yes. The sabbatical is going to be split up into 2 3-month sections. One year, one next year, both in the spring. Yeah, good questions. All right, number 5. With the exhaustion of the building and capital reserve fund, which we knew, we expected, $115,000 in building-related expenses shift to the operating budget. It's a big deal. Again, we knew it was coming, but it's a big lift. Number 6, 3% cost of living increase or adjustment to meet the UUA minimum salary guidelines for all staff, whichever is higher. Again, that's a value that we have said. Number 7, the initial annual commitment of $5,000 to the Minnesota Makoche honor tax. This is a conversation we've had for many years, and we are jumping in this year for the first time. Number 8, special events budget of $10,000-ish for things like block party, maybe birthday party for the building, maybe Sunday morning food. You heard Jen talk about that. Increased number of community dinners. The sorts of things we said we listened to you in the pledge campaign. This is that. And then last but not least, 5% increase to the UUA annual fund giving. Again, a values decision. Okay, 2 more slides, one of which is the answer to the trivia. So if you click one more time, yeah, final note from me. There are several significant opportunities. I'm just going to read this direct because I fussed over the language of this for so long. There are several significant opportunities for increased income and decreased expenses that may occur this year. And this budget does not rely on any of those. So for example, there could be surplus from this fiscal year we talked about. Maybe it's 16, maybe it's 142, maybe it's somewhere in between there. That's not applied to the budget going ahead. It could be. We may get relief on our property taxes. We may receive the Lilly Endowment Clergy Renewal Grant. And we may have early, partial, or complete payoff of the construction loan. That's a conversation that's happening right now. So for any of these opportunities, if they change, they will change in our favor. And that was a very intentional decision going into this year. We didn't want to have to ask for more money. And so we sort of made it hard on ourselves at the beginning. Hopefully these things will break in our favor going forward. And we also have ideas of where we're going to spend the money if it does break in our favor. Those things at the bottom there. Okay, before I reveal the answers to the trivia questions, are there any other questions? Yes? Mm-hmm. So the question was, how does our planned UUA giving compare to the recommended amount for a church our size? It's below. Yep, and we are catching up.
We're at about 60% of the ask.
We're about 60% of what is recommended for a church our size. Yes, question?
If Unitarian churches are no longer considered a religion or church by the federal government, does that cause any problems for us?
So the question was, if UUism is no longer considered a faith by the federal government, does that create problems for us? I have no idea. Yeah, it's a good question.
Just to be clear, that's just the Department of Defense purposes.
There's future.
Possibly, but
We don't know
But-
what
yeah,
will
Yeah.
happen tomorrow.
right. We
Yeah.
don't know of any right now.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, the latest CPI data that came out recently from the federal government is at 4.2% annually right now. And so I'm curious about like the 3% increase for staff versus kind of the reality that's on the ground that we only get access to right this week.
Yeah.
And I think the war around is great, sometimes there's some other things. And so I would just be curious about the flexibility around that 3% to meet the CPI needs as they are occurring on the ground right now. I understand you probably voted on this as a board before that data was out, so I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so the comment was about what flexibility do we have when it comes to cost of living increases for staff, given the reality that inflation is outpacing 3%. And the reality is 3% is where it is in the budget right now. There's a lot of things being balanced in the budget. But we know also that budgets change the second after they're passed. So I think the reality that the cost of living in the world is going to go up, and that may impact what we pay to our staff, I think that's a real reality. And if things vary to the point where we need to, have a conversation about it, and I know we will, but there's enough flexibility both in the policies and the budget itself to sort of weather most of those throughout the year. Yeah. Yes, way in the back. Yep. Yeah. So the question is, how are we, the board, held accountable for this, for the budget, for our goals, et cetera? It's you all. It's usually meetings like this, or if you want to attend the monthly board meetings, those are all open. But I'd say that's a good question for all of you to think about. Am I satisfied with the direction and the health, both culturally, spiritually, and financially of the church? Does the slate of new folks coming in feel like the right group? Do I feel called to participate more fully in any of these areas? One thing I will say, I'll make a plug for the Finance Committee, is there's a lot of detail that is just boiled down for this meeting that we go all the way down into the weeds on. So, any of those sort of rows in the table that I shared has an accompanying 60 rows sometimes. Well, maybe not, maybe 30 rows. But we can really get into, we are $2,000 over because we made a commitment to staff for their security, and we had to pay for someone to move because they were followed home. Like, we get into the specifics of how do we navigate a large budget for a large church. And I think when I think about accountability, that's the space where I feel like most accountable in those detailed conversations. So I would encourage anyone who's like, yeah, maybe I don't know how I feel about it, to please step in with us. And if it gets really bad, obviously, throw us out, and we'll hand over the reins, all that stuff. Okay, yes, one more question. Two more questions. Carol, please.
Am I right in assuming that the UUA also includes Mid-America?
So the question was, is the UUA, does that include Mid-America? Yes. Yeah. Way in the back, yep.
How do the pledges to date compare with that 1.7 number?
Can you say your question again in a different way? Because there's a couple ways I could answer. And
Okay. I remember the 1.7 budget number for the coming year. Is that right? Okay. So I just want to know what portion, how much of that is pledges?
Yes. 1.42. Yeah, so 1.44 was the amount that was pledged. Every year we walk that back a little bit because there's an expected sort of melt. So 1.41, 1.42 is that final amount. Final question. Yes.
Great. One more online question. If someone attends a board meeting, are they able to ask questions?
Absolutely. Sorry, yeah. If someone attends the board meeting and they are allowed to ask questions, yes. Encouraged to ask questions. They can read the materials ahead of time when the packet goes live. It's good times. There is a portion that's executive session where it's just the board, but I think that's maybe 30 minutes of the 2.5 hours. So the majority is open to everyone, and man, it'd be great to have someone join. I think folks have joined 3 or 4 times, and every time it makes the meeting better. Okay, what everyone's been waiting for. Olu, hit him with the answers. We have number 1, first used 3 largest funds are the Foundation, the Legacy Fund, and the Commons Ministerial Internship Fund. Yeah, we got some correct answers over here. Yeah, 2 to the 3. Okay. Number 2, this one was the doozy. 19 months elapsed from the initial budget draft in January of year A to knowing how the final dollar was spent in July of year B. 19 months. Number 3, 94% of fiscal year 26 total annual revenues were giving, donations, or fundraising. 94 cents of every dollar comes from someone handed it to the church. Number 4, 72% of fiscal year 26 total annual revenues were just annual pledges. 72%. That's actually pretty low if you think about other nonprofits. Food for thought. A5, answer number 5, 70% of fiscal year 26 total annual expenses were personnel and professional. Sorry, that's the one that's low when you think about other nonprofits. Sorry, 72, I've got my wires crossed. All right, and then last but not least, number 6, we pay $11,076.60 towards the construction loan every single month, of which approximately $4,000 is currently interest. Yeah, the reality. We knew this, and yet the reality is still like, man, I wish we could do something about that. So the amount will probably stay the same, but the share that will go to interest will probably shift. So the balloon payment, I believe, is 1.3 or maybe 1.1. It's still over $1 million. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's avenues for how we would cover it, like another capital campaign would be one of those. But that's a conversation for another day, I think. Right now, we're focused on this year's budget. Just, give it a sense of what the lay of the land is here. So that's all that I have prepared.
I would like to point out, this is Cameron's first year.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it. How do we want to do the votes for the budget?
So you've heard the treasurer's report. You've seen the presentation of the proposed budget. I would entertain a motion to approve that budget. Is there a second? Okay. We've had the discussion already, so I will call a vote. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your card or following the poll online. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, the budget is passed. Thank you. And thank you, Cameron. We're going to do some recognition of folks who've been serving in various board positions here. And so while Ray comes up to do that, Karen asked me to provide a reminder. We're trying to get this book for Nico around to as many people as possible. So if you have it, you want to write a note, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. But since we want to get to as many people as possible, you can read it afterward. Ray.
Hello, I'm Ray Dillon. I want to tell you that I was an elementary school teacher for 46 years. And so in my body, there's this sense of last day of school. And I'm feeling so much joy for our last day of school for the nominating committee, which put in some really good work this year. And I want to recognize the people who are leaving the nominating committee at the end of this today. They are leaving it. But first, a round of applause for all 6 members of the nominating committee. Thank you. 4 of us are leaving this year, and their names are David Bach, Evelyn Brown, Sandy Culpepper, and myself. So a round of applause.
And Ray, I want to thank you. Ray has not only served on the nominating committee, but has chaired it for a while and done a phenomenal job. And it takes a lot of work to chair a committee, so thank you for doing that. We have, on behalf of Isabel Quas, the chair of the foundation board, I want to recognize two folks whose term on the foundation board is ending. And just as a reminder, our foundation board is a separately elected group of folks who make decisions about allocating the proceeds of that foundation endowment fund to community organizations. So they have to do a lot of work reading applications, looking at the proposals, and making some hard decisions among a lot of worthy causes. So appreciate their work. The two folks who are completing their service on the foundation board are Ingrid Moe and Jeannie Belden Charles. So thank you to them for helping us live out our values and building community in that way. And then we have one member of the governing board whose term is up that I would like to acknowledge, Emily Bainakti, who's here. So she's brought a lot to the board. Her tech expertise in particular has enabled us to overhaul our website. Many of you, I think, will join me in appreciating that. She is graciously monitoring the Zoom remote attendees here today, but also in so many other ways has contributed over the last 3 years. Emily and I started on the board together at the same time, and so really we'll miss you, but thank you for everything you have done for us. Okay, I'm going to invite Ray to come back up. We have some election business to take care of.
Now I need your help. We've put together a slate of candidates that the nominating committee is recommending for next year, and you'll be voting on these. So the first vote is we would like to nominate for the officers of the Board of Trustees next year. This is Mark Garlick for President, Emily Wallace for Vice President, Cameron Smither for Treasurer, and Matt Keller for Secretary. We're very confident about this slate because these people have agreed to do this for a second year. So, all right. So now we're going to have all in favor of this slate of candidates to be our board. Thank you. And Emily, do you want to say? Okay, then I say that the ayes have it, and this is our slate. Is that the right way to say it? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Would those four people please stand up so that people who are here can see them? I'm going to keep that going. And now for the next election, this will be electing people for a term on the board. So I have 5 people. Jean Guignon joined the board in August last year, so she's never been voted in. So today we get a chance to vote her in. We have a new member for the board to replace Emily, and that is Kirk Cozine. And then we have 3 current board members who have agreed to serve another term, a 3-year term. So that is Catherine Harrell, Lou Quast, and Emily Wallace. Will those 5 people stand up if you're in the room? And now I'd like you to vote. All in favor of those 5 candidates? Emily, do we have any, do we have a report from the online community? Yeses. So, yes, we have now elected those 5 people. Next, the nominating committee wants to put up some people to serve on the foundation board. So it will be Caitlin Hallett-Pugh has agreed to serve a 2nd term. Carol Jackson and Robert Kimball are coming on for their 1st term. So All in favor of those three candidates, please vote. Thank you. And the online vote is good. So those three are elected. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to have them stand as they are able. Yes. Thank you, Carol. The nominating committee has 6 members. You're going to be voting for 5 of them. So we have 4 new members: Maria Heath, Amelia Marquez, C.T. Neil Herman, and Raylan Rassett. And we have 1 returning member, Katie Fox. Will those 5 people stand? And thank you. And let's vote them in. Very nice. And the online vote is also good. So those 5 members will be serving you next year on the nominating committee, along with 1 holdover. Thank you.
Okay, our final piece of business, per our bylaws, we ratified the appointment of delegates to the UUA General Assembly. So we had 5 folks who have offered to be delegates this year. They're all people who have served as delegates previously: Malia Hausnecht, Carol Jackson, Mark Caswell, Andrea Johnson, and Ralph Wyman. Now, because GA is a bit earlier this year, in fact, it starts today, and this meeting is a little bit later than usual, those names were actually due last week. So I consulted with the board, I consulted with Jen, I made a provisional appointment of those folks to be our delegates, subject to ratification here today. But just in all fairness, I just want to let you know that their names have been sent in. So, but if you ask me to, I can rescind those. But so I would seek a motion to approve those 5 individuals as delegates from First Universalist Church to the. So is there a second? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? I want to thank those folks. Being a delegate to GA is one of those sort of underappreciated tasks, but it's important in the functioning of our larger congregation. It's important in maintaining our connection with the larger congregation. And so anyway, thank you to them. We have traditionally, because this meeting occurs in enough time to name more, you might have seen on the agenda that sometimes we move to allow the board to appoint additional members. We don't need to do that this year because meeting's going on. So, so with that, I will ask Jen to come up for some closing words, and then we will adjourn the meeting. And just a reminder to turn your cards in when you're done, even if you wrote answers on them.
This is just a moment for appreciation. Thank you to each of you for being here. Thank you to everybody who's contributed to the life of the church over the course of this year, members and non-members. It takes all of us. This is our shared ministry, our shared work to live our faith out loud in the world. We're so grateful. Thank you.
With that, I would take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second? Is there any opposition? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much. You can have them.
Folks should take their flowers.
Yeah.
If you are one of the outgoing leadership positions, please take a flower in recognition of your service.
Can I take your card? That's
do. Still say 2. All right.